lines where I said practice detachment of outcome. So it's like some days you spend more time, some days you spend less, you know, and it could be a small thing too. Like one of my goals is having, you know, a sustainable garden up at the farm. And so the day before, there's not much that played into that goal. But yesterday, someone texted me about who to order the soil from and why and this and that. And then I texted that to Daniel, the guy who's maintaining our garden. And then, you know, he's going to reach out to the soil people on Monday and get that ball rolling. So it's like, just by me putting that in there, like I received and sent a text regarding soil about this garden, and that's it. And it's like one sentence, very simple thing, but it played a huge catalyst into that goal becoming a reality. You see what I mean? Because you need that soil to get there. You need to make that you need to establish that check that off the list. So that played into that goal that particular day. But then say tomorrow or tonight, when I review my goals, nothing might have played into that goal of the farm today. You know what I mean? So one day it could be practice detachment outcome. The next day something could have happened. The next day it could be practice detachment outcome again. So it's really, those review pages are almost more important because you're literally going over the goals that you've written out that morning and you're revisiting them right before you go to bed. And that's one of the key concepts to making these work. So the 3 steps I went through, starting with your visualization, imagining, you know, every last detail of it. Second is turning that into your burning desire by writing it down, realizing it into an actual, it's your first step into making it into a physical reality, having the faith that that's going to happen. And then the third step, having the detachment of outcome and removing yourself from looking for an external you know, success of that goal playing out. And so you have to look at more literal, the daily, like little steps that it takes. And so that's in that review process. Now it's a second way of, so in the morning when you write those goals, by doing that, it's impressing it on your subconscious, and then your subconscious runs, you know, 60, 70, 80% of your day. So your subconscious is going to make you do things and lead you into these situations that's going to play into those goals that you wrote out that morning, because they're layered in your subconscious. And the more you do this over time, if you are doing it every day or multiple times a week or even just once a week, rather than once a year, once a month, or once a quarter, you know, the more frequent, the better, because you're getting it more and more in your subconscious, and then your subconscious creates your reality. So by going about your everyday life and it's embedded in your subconscious, you're going to continue to lead down those paths. Now, you want to revisit this again at the end of the day, because before you go to sleep is when you become, you get into your deepest brainwave state there. It's called theta waves. And throughout the day, we're operating on beta. And beta is like, you know, go, answer this call, answer this text. I have to be here. I have to be there. I have to do this. So you're operating on the beta waves frequency range. Below that, though, when you zone out, the final frequency range you hit before going into sleep is theta. And that's where you literally have a bridge to your subconscious. And so your left and right hemispheres control each other. So your left is logical and your right is more creative and I guess you'd say intuitive. Your left brain, though, is the gatekeeper to your right brain. So if the logic doesn't make sense, your right brain's not gonna interact with it. It's not gonna react to it. And your right brain is needed in order for that manifestation stuff to happen, for you to subconsciously actually lead your life into these things. So what happens now is in your theta state, you can bypass that left brain gatekeeper, kind of like you can't get past it unless you let its guard down. And by letting its guard down is in the theta state, it it's kind of like that level of consciousness is now it's not aware of what's happening, you know. So this is how hypnosis works. And when you're in the theta state, your right brain can now be open to suggestive thoughts or, you know, influences that normally your left brain would block. And they would block it because um, the science behind it, and this goes back to having faith in your goals, is it will block it because it doesn't see visual representation of it through your five senses. So your brain works off of, what can I see, touch, feel, taste, like what's tangible, you know. And so when you shut your eyes and you write out these goals and you visualize this and you think of these thoughts and smells and tastes, and like, okay, I'm going to have a house on the beach and I can hear the waves crashing and I can feel the temperature and I can feel the wind blowing sand, you know, like pelting against my skin. Like you can feel all these minor details. Um, but if you open your eyes and then you see you're standing in Oakland and you see some crackheads walking down the street, like your brain tells your subconscious, like, no, that's just it doesn't match. You know what I mean? So these hypnotic states, where your left brain lowers its guard down, it allows these suggestions to get into your right brain. And by doing so, you have to, so the trick to this, what I was getting at is you have to have the ability to have faith ultimately. And so that's where you can look now to where religions come into play, where they instruct the followers to pray, and through praying, they're doing it through this form of a hypnotic state sometimes, you know, especially in churches where they have certain frequencies playing, like bells and singing and songs and stuff like that. And they're scientifically programmed in different frequencies, root frequencies. So like the Vatican changed the root frequency from 432 hertz to 440 hertz. And this is just a 7-degree shift in hertz, but it changes the entire resonance of the resulting music that's played from that root frequency. And so just that 7-degree shift makes it from 432 being the most beautiful sounding frequency known to man, to then 440 hertz to becoming a dissonant frequency that doesn't, you know, elevate things. So that's an example of where these vibratory states, these hypnotic states, can potentially be manipulated by outside forces, not only just by other sounds, but also by practices, you know, and interpretations or like followings, teachings, stuff like that. So this comes back to what I was saying about how you can have these godly powers without having the religion attached to it. And so by having the faith that these visions that you're creating and these goals that you're writing out are going to actually manifest itself, is you it's basically you winning the battle against your brain telling you that those things haven't happened yet. You have to, the trick is visualizing them as happened. And it's not like a fake it till you make it. You don't want to do that either, because that's just as bad. It's being in the moment of being, how is it making you feel? How is it making you interact in the outside world? How are other people interacting with you? How do people talk to you? How do you talk to other people when that actually becomes a reality? So that's what I'm saying. You have to visualize this reality, this end result, and you have to become that person. And so that's goes back to what we were saying with the journey, is you set these end goals. It's like a keyframe in movies or in animation. You set where it starts and you set where it ends. And then it's called a motion tween, where it goes between these two and it creates the motion that's required to make that from the start result to the end result. So, you would program it like, okay, I want to start here and end here, but with an arc like this. So the computer would make that happen and follow that path. And so that's kind of what you got to do here, is you got to understand like, okay, this is where I'm at, this is where I want to go. In order to be here, I'm going to have to, you know, enhance your lifestyle in all these different ways, whether that be from learning more stuff, getting a better job, automating your income to be able to then learn more or have more time to be able to learn more about yourself or more about what you want or how to get to what you want, stuff like that. So these are all levels of mastery where it's like you can spend 1 year like really perfecting your career, perfecting a certain talent that can then provide you income for say the rest of your life or the next 10 years or something, you know what I mean? So um it doesn't have to be like, okay, the rest of my life is now dedicated to this or that. It could just be like, okay, I'm right now, Andrew's a great example. He's 2 decades younger than me. His priorities, his time in life is a whole different stage than where I'm at. He can make those mistakes and learn those lessons and try new things and figure out what he does or doesn't like. But you know, through life, I got to take the experiences that I've already had and make sure that those haven't gone to waste. So whenever your your mindset isn't aligned, it's called cohesiveness or not cohesiveness. What's the word I'm looking for? Congruent, congruent, and congruent's like parallel. It's like you can't say or act one thing but then do something different and expect to have the result that you want. So you have to have everything be congruent. So if you want to be this type of person, you truly have to do the work to become that type of person, and none of this stuff is to say that you're going to set your goals and manifestations and they're just going to happen. You have to put in the work, and the work sometimes is extremely difficult and hard and challenging, and that's what you have to commit to. And that's another thing that people don't understand. They look at it and they're like, oh well, I wish for this or that, and it never happened, so this stuff is just uh wishy-washy, it doesn't work. So that's not true. They just didn't put in the work, or they didn't put in the commitment or the time that it took to get to their thing. And the more you want, the more it's going to take, and Gavin mentioned this last week, like he was setting little goals for his schoolwork and stuff, and homework, stuff like that. And these are things you can see on a smaller basis, on a quicker scale. But something like, I want to make $1 million isn't going to happen in a week's time. You have to become that millionaire, and you have to do that on every level, from the way that you think to the way that you sleep, to the way that you decide to interact with your social circles, to the way that you are responsible for your responsibilities, how you handle all that and all the different aspects. So until you can master these certain components, you can't move up to the next level. It's just like a video game or something. So that's what this does, is you set your destination and you become that person through putting in the work and the sacrifice and willing to go up those challenges. And that there's a concept to this, and it's called like I forget what it's called, but it's basically a basic concept that we're all used to because of movies. But it's like a fairy tale concept where there's a hero, there's a villain, there's someone that gets saved, there's a conclusion that's like a good conclusion, and there's a quest. And so that's kind of how you got to look at your life. Is you want to create your story. You want to be the hero of your story. You want to find out what you're fighting for, what you want to earn, what you want to get, what you want to achieve, and then figure out what quests you got to go on to go get that. So when you think about it like that, you can kind of more relate it to just anything, whether that be a movie or a video game or anything, a book. So you want to put the work in that's required, and have the faith that's also required. And this is done as well through like I was getting at with religion, this is done through prayer. So these concepts of coming up with your visualization, writing it out, having faith in it, these are all religious type of concepts that can be dissected and applied in the sense of like, okay, the Bible would say stuff like this, but just using different words. You know what I mean? So again, I don't want to mesh the two of saying like this is a religious teaching. It's more of like the scientific approach to spirituality that religion, I don't want to say steals from, but borrows from as well. And they just make you view it from a religious frame rather than a scientific frame. So the concept I'm talking here is basically similar to what prayer is in a religion. And prayer is rooted in faith. It must not have an attachment of expectation. It's not like you're going to kneel down and say a prayer and then stand up and your grandfather's healed of cancer the next day or something. It's like it's a ongoing commitment to that vision and to that energy. And so you're it's like a savings account you're putting it in. So you got to continually have that prayer, that vision, that request to the universe. And again, it's about not forcing it. So what prayer ultimately means is it's yielding to your desires. It's allowing them to happen. It's not forcing them to happen. It's not like saying, hey, you need to become a manifestation right now. It's like I'm allowing this to become part of my life. And in doing so, I need to become the person that's going to be able to receive that manifestation. And so to do that, like I said, you got to go through that journey. You got to figure out what it is you want to do. You have to go through the hard struggles. And the bigger your outcome you want, the bigger the struggles are going to be. And that's going to be a fact. So these are all things that I've learned personally. I've done multiple times, from small to large. And that's why I'm so adamant about, I'm not like reiterating things. I'm not just like consuming knowledge and then just repeating it to you guys. Repeating repeatable situations that have happened to me from knowledge that I've learned over years. And this knowledge becomes knowledge by having it combined with experience. So that knowledge plus experience is what turns into wisdom. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying is the knowledge is the knowledge. The experience is a whole nother component. And now what I'm telling you guys is wisdom, because it's taking that knowledge, it combined it with my personal experiences. I know that it worked. I know that it doesn't work when you don't do it. And I've done the research to figure out what core steps make it work. And so again, all I'm trying to do is just pass this along, exponentially, order of magnitude lower than what it took me. If it took me 20 years to get to where I'm at right now, hopefully it takes you guys 5 years, and a lot of that can just be learned by shaving time off through other people's experiences. And that's really all this is. So that kind of wraps things up for what I wanted to talk about. Again, I know we talked about some of that on the first call. I've mentioned it on other calls. I don't want to say that that's what every call is going to be about, but it's the overarching concept. And it's more about like, how can we take those concepts and evolve them into each call each week, whether that be through experiences that people are having, integrating them into their lives, or challenges maybe, or, not knowing ways of how to integrate it or not being sure about it. Um, challenging each other to continue writing your goals, stuff like that. And again, not getting down on yourself if you don't do it. And, I've been doing it for like after you get past about 30 days of doing it every day, it just becomes part of like a routine. And that reflection period becomes more like a journaling type thing, to where it's like you're almost just reviewing your day and just writing down some of the key points of your day. And it almost helps in a weird way. Like I said, you don't even realize it. It's hard to put into words, but you'd realize it if you did it for, say, 30 days, or probably even half that time, just consecutively. You'd start to see how you could even flip back through your pages and see how your goals will kind of slightly shift, to adapt to either what's more important to you, or maybe what you thought you were writing for a while you could change it, and now it's not as important, or something else changed, something else happened in your life. So it's like a feedback of, like, and the way I'm looking at it now is like, man, I could look back into this book of daily goals and, into years from now, or if there's maybe some issue coming up in life or something, you can kind of go back through and try to identify, like, where did that start happening, like when you were writing about stuff, and so there's different benefits to doing this. But one, in general, like I said, I've had goals come into play for me just writing it down once, putting it away, and that being that. But I've also had things happen way quicker, way more precise by doing it consistently like I do. And I'm able to, like, just less than a week ago, I added two updated goals. Just not even goals, just things that are happening in my life that I wanted the situations to play out a certain way. And so I just added those into my goals each day. And sure enough, within 3 days, one of those, it already shifted into the direction I wanted to shift. And you could call it a coincidence, or maybe it's not. It doesn't matter. It's going in the direction I wanted to go in. So the point is, like, if what I did caused it, great. If it didn't, so be it. But I'm still going to do what I did, because even if it didn't cause it, it didn't do any harm. You know what I mean? And what we've seen over time, what we've seen with other, you know, prominent experiments or people, or both, just like the Napoleon Hill thing with Andrew Carnegie, you could definitely say a lot of that stuff is just up to chance or coincidence or whatever. But when you see it over and over and over and over and over and over again for years and years and years, decades, millennia, is like, you see it throughout history of how all these different civilizations achieve things. And when you play it back to these concepts, it's really just kind of fascinating to see. It's just different ways they did it, or, like I said, religions, managing people's expectations in ways that, the present times allow us to do differently than how it was done in the past. And a lot of that has to do even with technology too, like just the internet alone.